Right. Hello and good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Future of Music Media panel. I guess it's no surprise that the media has been affected very seriously by the current pandemic situation. So today we have with us a number of editors and freelancers, people from across the media, from both print and online, who we're going to chat about the current situation and the possible kind of solutions and the possible scenarios for the next year or so. First introductions. My name's Anastasia. I used to be a writer, but nowadays I run a PR company called Noise Unit. So I work with both print and online, UK and European media as well. And today we've got with us Jen from the line of Best Fit. We've got Dom from Under the Radar. We've got Rachel from Crack Magazine, Alex from Songlines magazine, and we have Matthew, who's freelancing for a whole host of people. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, your outlet, and your role within this outlet first, please. Starting with you, Jen.
Oh, right. Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a contributing editor to the line of Best Fit, and I look after all their partnerships.
Okay, Dom?
Hi, I'm Dom. So I'm the festivals and live reviews editor for Under the Radar, which has kind of not really happened since February. Prior to that, I was with Drowned in Sound for about 20 years.
Okay, Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm deputy editor of Crack Magazine, the digital version and the print version.
Alex?
Hi, I'm Alexandra Petropoulos. I am the deputy editor of Songlines magazine, which is a world music magazine that is in print and digital at the moment. And yeah, we cover loads of different music from around the world, usually stuff that has some kind of traditional link or roots.
And Matthew, please.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I've mainly written for NMEs. I'm a freelance writer. I've done some editing. Also written for Vice, Consequence of Sound, Drowned in Sound, Clash, The Quietest, Line of Best Fit, a fair few.
Okay, so it's quite an illustrious portfolio there. Obviously, the media was affected very, very seriously by the events that started happening probably at the start of the year and certainly from March onwards. Would you like kind of to tell me how it affected your particular outlet or your work as a freelancer, in your case, Matthew? What was kind of immediate impact? What changes you have to undertake kind of to mitigate this impact? And what your current situation is. Sorry. Oh, go on, Matthew. Go on.
Oh no, sorry. I thought that was going to riddle me. So yeah, it's affected everyone. I think as a freelance writer, you've kind of got feet in both camps to a certain extent, because you're spending a lot of your day writing pitches and receiving them. The most obvious and immediate egregious thing has been navigating the additional layers of niceties in the first paragraph. Lots of, hope you're dealing with everything okay in these crazy times, which I'm sure a lot of editors in the room are familiar with. But I think it's been a case of keeping up to date. I think a lot of editors are commissioning only in-house now, which is completely understandable. And that sometimes makes things trickier. I find in terms of keeping up to date, social media is quite a useful one. Searching on Twitter, looking at which editors are available, because there are still editors out there, crying out for good pitches and for work. Obviously, if you can get an anchor job or you've got some kind of anchor work that you've been lucky enough that's continued, that's a big help. But I think from my approach as a freelancer, it's just about finding those people who are looking for work. And in some respects, there's been opportunities because, as a writer, there's been so many stories around what's happened with lockdown and with coronavirus, and there's been some brilliant journalism that's come out of it. So I would say, my advice to any sort of, younger or newer writers would be just to, use social media to your advantage as much as it's a bit of a hellhole sometimes, especially, if you're struggling with mental health and that side of things. But beyond that, I think a certain degree of patience. I think quite a bit about something Robin Murray from Clash said to me once about, you don't know who's on the other end of the inbox. You don't know what people are going through. I'm looking at emails I've sent to editors thinking, God, why haven't they replied yet? But there's a ton of emails in my inbox from artists and PRs that maybe I haven't had time to go through. So it's been an anxious time, as it has for everyone. So I think compassion is important, and has been something I've tried to keep at the forefront of my mind.
Okay, no, that's really good advice, and I guess that would also apply to the musicians who are just starting off and trying to reach out to the writers as well as the editors, bearing in mind that people have literally hundreds of emails per day, to deal with, and in this situation, it's you have to be especially kind of careful about it. You do quite a lot of stuff for the NME, Matthew, and okay, you're not an editor, but you kind of a regular, you're part of the news pool there. So
Yeah.
as your perception, as a kind of established freelancer within this organization, how has their coverage changed, over the past 6 months?
I think there's been, the thing is, there's been multiple challenges. It's not just been lockdown. It's not just been coronavirus. In terms of readership, I think there was a lot publicised about Charlie Gunn did very well in taking over in the online editorial side of things. There was a boost in readership. There's also been, which we may come on to later, a decline as well in the amount of time people are spending with that simultaneously. The other thing, which I don't want to sort of jump too far ahead, Black Lives Matter has been a huge part as well, which I think to a certain extent the NME have dealt with reasonably well. There's been more coverage, looking at the artists they've had on the cover. There's been, Arlo Parks, Little Sims, Megan Thee Stallion, Jessie Reyes, and commissioning Black writers as well, Janessa Williams and Nati Kasambala, some brilliant writers to cover that. So there's been challenges coming from multiple angles. And I think, as with anything, as with coronavirus, with lockdown, it's been about providing a voice to the people who need a voice, and providing good quality journalism to cover that. So, I mean, overall, it's, as with everything, we dissolve into platitudes about unprecedented times and those sort of cliches, but it's been an opportunity to explore some of those things at a higher level. And I think for NME, they've reacted reasonably well to that, without turning it too much into clickbait or, sort of hashtag content material. So yeah, I think the NME have addressed their readership. They've got a pretty good idea of what readers want, and we've just been trying to react to that as quickly and eloquently as possible.
Alex, perhaps, you can tell us what's been happening with Songlines, it being a print magazine, so there's an additional kind of a challenge there. So what were the initial kind of challenges, how you managed to overcome them, and where you're at the moment?
We were quite old school in the way that we were still dealing with a lot of our releases, because we're mainly a reviews-driven magazine. And that we were still requesting that physical CDs be sent in right up until the lockdown. So then obviously since then, with everyone working remotely, we've had to reevaluate how we accept reviews, and so that's had to change. So as far as our own personal, it's been interesting to see us kind of jump into the 21st century that we were kind of resisting for a really long time. But as far as the other ways of operation, we were always big on trying to make sure that our features had some kind of peg, like a tour that the artist was going on, or an album to kind of help garner interest for their music. But obviously with so little tours on and a lot of releases being delayed or postponed, we've been able to kind of focus on some just more interesting features that it was yes, this would be great to cover sometime, but we don't really have a peg for it, so we never really had space for it. So it's been quite interesting in the last couple of months that we've been able to do a couple of features that it was just it's just really interesting content. So.
And are you still in print or digital only at the moment?
No, we're still doing print, and people are still subscribing to print because I think the other thing is, I hear all the time that because we have a CD that comes on the cover of every issue, so we pick the top 10 tracks from the album or the issue. That a lot of people will say that they subscribe just for the CD because nobody's got time to read the magazine itself. But everybody's got time to read the magazine now. Nobody's doing much other than sitting at home, so. So we're still doing print. We have digital editions as well, so we do have quite a few subscribers via digital, but we're still pretty strong in both, I'd say.
Have you noticed any changes with regard to your subscriber numbers since the pandemic?
Yeah, I think they've gone up. Yeah, which has been great. I'm not the right person to ask how much by, but that is what I'm aware of. So yeah.
And what Matthew was mentioning earlier, social media and social media presence. Did you kind of concentrate on that side of things more in the last 6 months, or has there been any changes there?
Yes, we've tried our best, but with everything happening, we've had some members of staff furloughed. And so it's very difficult to find the time to do it because it can be very time consuming. So we have been trying, but probably not taking advantage of it as much as we should, to be honest.
And how many staff do you still have working? I'm guessing working remotely as well.
Yeah, so it's just Joe Frost, who's the editor of the magazine, and me as far as the editorial team goes. And we've got a slew of freelance writers, but so it's just the two of us putting together the magazine editorially, so it's a lot of work.
Imagine, yes. In my experience talking with media from friends across the board, a lot of people were furloughed, and a lot of freelancers were let go as a result of this situation. Did you keep most of your freelancers?
Yeah, well, we've always been highly freelance anyway, so we've only got an editorial assistant furloughed at the moment. So that obviously helped to have an extra pair of hands. But generally, most of our writers are always freelance, so we've got to still have content. So we're still using all of our freelancers, which is good because then we can still be giving them a little bit of work when maybe they've lost some elsewhere. But it's not been a completely across board. Like we had a freelancer who did our listings for our gigs, and that was quite a big job. However, there are no gigs, so we've kind of had to put her on furlough for the moment. But obviously, assuming things go back to normal as soon as possible, she'll be back. So.
Okay. And Rachel, what about you? Because obviously Crack, you've got distribution across several cities, in the UK and across Europe and New York, I believe now as well. Yes. You have a very significant magazine, but also digital presence.
Yes.
So can you kind of give us a bit of a brief overview of what's been happening with you lately?
Yeah. So we pretty much, when lockdown was announced and the whole crisis started, we had to cease printing almost immediately because all our advertisers just kind of evaporated overnight. And it was at a time that was leading up to festival season, which is kind of like our busiest season for advertising. So we had to put our issues on hold, and they're still on hold. So we decided to bring the print issue that everyone knows us for to a digital version. So we've worked on that. We launched that in mid to end of April, after around a month after this whole thing started. And yeah, it's been going really well. It's a subscription model that we launched. So we launched a subscription model that's either £50 a year or a £5 a month to kind of like help us stay afloat. It's been rough. We've had to make a lot of changes, but some of them have been quite positive for the magazine. It's been, I guess, difficult in terms of making the shift and kind of working with the new timelines, that, getting used to kind of like the new digital climate rather than doing what we did, which was quite traditional, or at least my role working in print was quite traditional in the sense of, rushing to make print deadline every month and distributing it. So that's been a challenge or a change to make rather. Yeah, it's been challenging. It's been hard to kind of have our, we've had to kind of downscale our editorial budgets and stuff, and the kind of things we put out, the frequency. But it's been okay. We're getting through it, and we still have our subscription model. We're hoping to come back to print next year, depending on what public safety is like at that time, which I guess is what's kind of complicated at the moment. We don't really know what's going to happen in the rest of the year, and how,
well, it is one of the challenges, the fact that things are so unpredictable.
Yeah, and everyone's talking about a second wave, and we're just like, oh god, we have to brace ourselves for a second wave. Potentially, hopefully it doesn't happen. But as it stands, we're running our digital magazine. We are kind of using new practices that we never used before, which has been really interesting and really rewarding. We've always kind of been digitally inclined and technology inclined at Crack. We've produced like VR headsets with our cover stars, like the Bjork cover and all these kind of things. So kind of being backed into this corner where we can't use traditional media, we've gotten to explore some new kind of covers, which has been cool. We did like 3D design for our first split covers after April, which is cool. Then we did kind of like an animated clay animation that we worked with this really cool artist for our 100 Gex cover. So we've explored different things, which has been really rewarding, and it's nice to see that we can adapt. And
are you now doing most of the work in-house, or have you kept your freelancers?
We've kept a lot of our freelancers, or rather our like availability for freelancers. We've kept, I would say, like a good 80% of it. We've had to kind of downscale the amount of content we put out because of budgets and stuff. But for the most part, we're still using freelancers because our in-house team isn't that big, and specifically on editorial, it's just 2 of us. So we don't have the capacity to organize and edit the whole magazine and also write it. So yeah, we still have opportunities open for freelancers.
Kind of harking back to what Alex was saying there about slight changes in coverage, because obviously there are no live gigs, and from memory now, it feels like such a distant memory. With Crack, you always had, festivals, and you had a lot of live stuff, in the magazine. What have been the changes to your content? What you're covering now?
Besides the live reviews, I wouldn't say we've had too many changes in our content in terms of what we used to put in the magazine and what we put in the digital magazine. We still have our regular features, and we still treat the cover stories and all the main features with the same treatment, basically. Besides the obviously festival coverage and live coverage, a lot of that coverage used to happen on video at Crack too. And obviously that's been put on hold, and that's kind of something we used to do a lot during the summer because it's something that we can do that's quite unique to us, and it's a different way of like seeing festival and like live review coverage. So obviously that's been put on hold. So yeah, in terms of other than that, I would say we've mostly kind of kept to our same editorial voice, obviously adapting with the times. But in terms of editorial, I would say it's more or less the same. We still kind of take from a diverse pool of genres, and we've never kind of just covered one thing.
Am I right thinking that you did have a subscription available prior to the pandemic? It was something that...
Well, we had a Crack shop, which meant that if we didn't distribute in cities, obviously we were a free publication, if we didn't distribute in cities that you live in, then you could order the magazine to be shipped to you. But our subscription model now, before that was more like if you don't have access to Crack, and you would like access to Crack, then you can order it. But now it's a case of, because of the times and how we've had to adapt, now it's a case of, we're doing a subscription model for everyone because we're obviously not printing at the moment.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. You managed to pull it off so quickly.
Yeah, it was a lot, but we did it.
Okay, Dom, so you're working with a publication that's based in the US, yeah, and it is a print magazine. And well, I've certainly been able to buy print from some outlets in the UK as well. And it has quite a significant, digital presence as well. Can you tell us, what's been happening with you, how it's affected, print and where you're going now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Under the Radar normally looks to try and put, I mean, there is no set time scale, but they normally look to try and put out 4 print editions a year. And so the first one was due to come out sort of like around about March, April time. And then that obviously got sidelined in light of the pandemic. So we've actually just finished the first print edition, and it should actually be out by the end of the month. So I know that it was shipped off on Friday with the intention of it landing in certain parts of Europe, certainly before the 31st of the month. But I mean, in terms of the actual online part of the site, I mean, obviously the festivals and live reviews, I mean, that's suffered. I think the last live review I think that was put on there was the 11th of March or something like that. And then we did actually have a festival review that went live last week, because there was a festival in Lithuania, one of the few I think that's taken place anywhere. And we did have a writer that was based in Latvia that actually managed to cover that. In terms of the actual website, a lot of the other the features have remained the same. I mean, I guess one thing where the interviews and the focus of the interviews have changed is that we've specifically asked artists to sort of like tell us about what they've been doing, sort of like during the pandemic, how they've coped with it, how their mental health's coped with it, whether it's had an impact on the work, on their family life, and I guess really what sort of like changed, over the time that they've been in various stages of lockdown. And I think we've had some, really interesting results, to be honest. I mean, we've got a couple of people now as well that are doing podcasts. So we've got Andy, if you know Andy from Liverpool, who's doing one, and then Laura, who's based in the States, who's doing one, which has also been quite interesting, to be honest. Because what they're sort of like, again, trying to do is just sort of get artists to I guess to sort of like share, just share some of the creative sort of like tips and messages that they've been doing sort of like while they've been trying to cope with this, and what kind of impact it'll have going forward. I mean, I guess the one thing that we're all sort of concerned about is what the future holds. I don't think anyone sort of like knows what the future holds really. I guess everyone sort of like mentioned things like finance and obviously having to furlough people. I mean, one of the issues that we've got with Under the Radar is, in terms of like paying writers, there's a massive pool of freelance writers, but in terms of payment, I mean, that's pretty much dried up. So the majority of people have been like, I guess, doing any other kind of work they possibly can do. I mean, I've been doing a lot of other work as well in employment law, just to sort of like try and make ends meet. And I think that's probably been the biggest downside, which I don't know if the rest of you can probably relate to that. I'm sure you can. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the rest of the print issues, I mean, the plan from Mark, who's the overall editor, is to try and get a second one out by the end of the year. But again, a lot of that's based on, I mean, you've already mentioned advertising, and quite a lot of the advertising would sort of like normally go hand in hand with festivals and things like that, and obviously tour schedules and different things. So yeah, it's a precarious time, I think.
Okay, well, fantastic news that you've got a new magazine coming out. Anything in print at the moment, it feels really, really special. Well, from print onto online, so Jen, obviously Best Fit, is one of the most prominent, new music platforms, supporting emerging musicians on very much kind of global scale. You didn't have to worry about print, but I'm sure, lack of festivals and lack of tourings also affected your outlet. Can you tell us what's been happening with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were affected pretty early on because we had stage scheduled at South by Southwest, which we'd
Ouch.
put a lot of work into, and had a lot of content built around. So that went quite early in March. So I think that was a sort of sudden realization that this was really going to affect partnerships, festivals. Tour dates doesn't really affect us very much. So I think, yeah, that was the kind of initial, and then there was the sort of 2 weeks of panic where I think everyone just sort of switched off and focused on like what the hell's going to happen. And we took a little step back and thought about ways that we could kind of do something new, make use of a different part of the site. And that was when we decided to do our Instagram Live series, Off the Road, which has actually been really successful and like a really great outlet for us, especially over the kind of like harshest parts of lockdown. Doing everything from like live sessions to Q&As to, I think we've had like a cocktail masterclass and an art class, and there's been some weird stuff on there. But
yeah, really amazing stuff, you know, and I think people, you know, wanted cheering up during lockdown as well. So those kind of unusual things went down really well. Yeah,
and then I mean, for me, from the partnership side, the summer's always super busy with festival partnerships, and that's all completely disappeared. So we've just been looking into different avenues and approaching different people and trying to source out different opportunities. And then generally on the wider side, it's actually been really, really busy, I think, because a lot of like labels and marketing teams would traditionally be doing other ways to promote artists, and a lot has now fallen back on press and on that kind of like online digital content coverage. So I think for us, the site's actually been busier than ever over the last few months. It's been insane, the amount of interviews we've been offered and the amount of things to write about, artists to cover, the amount of music that's coming out now especially. And I think one thing that's really cool that we've been doing is because obviously in lieu of photo shoots are the sort of one bit that we haven't really been able to expand on. So in lieu of photo shoots, we're doing some really nice illustrations from can't remember the name of the artist, Grace something, but she's fantastic. She's done a really cool one with Stuart Murdoch and with Jarvis Cocker, and they're really beautiful. So I think that's been like a nice thing that we would never have done before that we've started doing now.
Okay, and where do you see things going, you know, for digital media? And obviously things are changing dramatically, literally from day to day. Well, let's say in the next 6 months, given that we may or may not have the second wave, you know, there are still serious concerns of the public health. And there are very few festivals happening and likely to happen in the 6-9 months probably, you know. So what sort of business models, you know, you're looking at, you know, and what kind of changes do you think will happen in the digital media?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two parts to the site. There's the sort of editorial side, and then there's the partnerships and native content side. And I think on the editorial side, I can't see a huge amount changing. Potentially looking into more kind of ways that we can create things and engage with the audience, whether it's playlisting or whether it's, you know, doing video features or whether it's continuing with the Instagram lives or maybe building that out into something else. And then on the kind of more partnership side, we're just looking into like different opportunities at the moment and reaching out to kind of different clients that we would never have normally approached, because obviously things are so different at the moment. I think people are looking for new ways to connect with an audience, and we have quite a strong one, especially in the UK, when it comes to kind of that new music area. So I think, and the artists that go with it, you know, they're not making any money from touring, so they're looking for opportunities as well. That's something that we're building on right now.
So, and what kind of, you know, organizations, businesses you're looking to partner with, you know?
Well, we're just reaching out to a lot of different brands from the kind of world of like household products through to drink, alcohol, soft drinks, even looking into different sports and just anything really. I don't really want to give away too much.
To name any names, I appreciate the situation there.
But, you know, it's a lot of legwork, it's a lot of cold emailing, it's a lot of no replies. But that's what we're kind of trying to build on right now is, instead of festivals, you know, music bodies, which should be traditional, looking more into the brand world.
Yes, okay. Well, from this on to print, and it's something that's already been mentioned by Dom and Alex. The difficulties there, and obviously we've seen that with some publications who had to abandon their print issues for the time being, and some they're still keeping going. Alex, where do you think that print music media is going to be in the 6 months, a year from now?
Whoa, that's a big question, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I'm normally a massive pessimist, so I'm just gonna put that out there. But I am feeling surprisingly hopeful. So I don't know if maybe it's just lockdown has gotten to my head as much as everyone else. But I don't know. I'm feeling like, yes, things are changing, but I don't think we're gonna see the death of print yet. And I also wonder if part of that is just because, I mean, how many years has it been that I've listened to people going, it's the death of print, it's the death of, and we've still hung on. So we're still very much print magazine, even though we do the digital. And that really hasn't seemed to change throughout the lockdown yet. Obviously, there might be a knock-on effect because obviously our advertising has been affected because of everything, because again, we kind of, like Rachel was saying and Jen, a lot of our advertisers come from festivals, especially this time of year, so that has been a really hard adjustment. So whether that has knock-on effects for a few issues down the road, I'm sure it will, but at the moment we kind of just condensed our print edition, so but not even by that much. We used to be like 96 pages. I think we're at 80, so we just kind of came down a little bit to kind of just condense everything a little bit, and it seems to be working all right for now. So I'm hopeful that it's not going to change too much in the future.
I think that at the moment most of your finance come from subscriptions, from the people who are subscribing to the magazine in the absence of advertisers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I still think our majority probably comes from the advertisement. We're just lucky that we're still having a pretty strong subscription base at the moment. But I don't quote me on it because I'm not the person who does the numbers. So
No, fair enough. I understand. So. Well, obviously, we have lost some print media with a list up here in Scotland, and obviously Q being the most notable examples. But, I understand that, print media is not it's not just a solid one thing. There are different kinds of models happening, with glossy magazines, with newspapers and things like that. And, they're probably moving in quite different directions, all those different things. But has anybody tried, because one of the kind of big things that's come out in the lockdown was live streaming, and it was a very kind of immediate thing that happened. And obviously, Lionel Beth Fit, you took it up and used it quite a lot. Anybody used those new digital forms, or kind of AR, VR innovations?
Yeah, we did. So we kind of did like 3D cover designs, which is something that wouldn't be possible in print. Mm-hmm. We've also launched those 3D covers with an AR function. So if you could like scan your phone and go on this link and hold your camera up and see and have our covers, like our 3D head covers, like spinning on any background, basically. Mm-hmm. So we did that, and we're also looking into, I can't talk about it too much, but we're gonna launch a project that incorporates AR and 3D with live performance, like live streaming performance. And yeah, so we've always kind of been tech adjacent at Crack, like I was saying before. We've always kind of like lent into the intersections of music and technology, and it's something that we did with our Simple Things Festival in Bristol. Yeah. And just with our like kind of traditional print magazines too. So yeah, we did a few Instagram kind of like in conversations. We did one with Phoebe Bridgers and Hayley Williams. We did one with Rina Sawayama and Mel C from the Spice Girls, which was fun. So we've done a few, but that I think also during that time when everyone kind of like jumped on the live streaming, personally, as I guess like a user, right, a social media user, I kind of had like live stream fatigue by the end of it. So I think we were just careful not to like oversaturate everything and not just do it for the sake of it.
That's what I found as well, working with some festivals, and like getting some feedback in terms of live streaming. I think, initially there was a lot of excitement. 2 months down the line, not so much, and you had to kind of offer something a bit more, a special product, and certainly kind of high quality live streams to engage the listeners.
And I guess also just like give people a break, including ourselves. I think this time has been obviously challenging for everyone all over the world. And there's a lot of anxiety and kind of like concern about the future and the present, obviously, because there's a threat of a deadly virus and all this stuff. So I think it's important that like, as good as social media has been during this time, I also think that, we should allow ourselves some time to kind of like switch off or do that. In the beginning of lockdown, I noticed my own kind of usage of social media has like really fluctuated. It's been pretty chaotic. Sometimes I'm really interested in it. Sometimes I won't look at socials for like a day or two because I just can't handle it. So I think
well, it's certainly kind of, double-edged sword, as Matthew was saying about, mental health, and it's in terms of sources of news, and, things were changing so fast, so social media was excellent for that. But on the other hand, I would say that the levels of disinformation, at least when it comes to kind of news media, and the things being very kind of turbulent and febrile and emotive,
it's just overwhelming, I think, just life,
Yeah. Well, from kind of negatives onto positives, I think, we all know about the negatives of this situation. That perhaps, if each one of you comes up with one positive thing that's come out of this crisis for your publication, or, for yourself personally as a freelancer. Matthew, what would you say?
I think it's been touched on, but I think in some respects, some of these, it's provided an opportunity for people to look at innovative ways of how can we make this more accessible, how can we make it more interactive. I think it's forced people to be creative, and whether that's in print or beyond. I certainly think, Rachel touched on it there, but I think Crack is one that's always been particularly good at, we joke about pivot to video, but the image side of things is really important, making things, giving things more of a magazine kind of angle, and making it sort of beautiful and useful. And, the whole side of live streaming, I think the fatigue thing is 100% real, but it has shoved us into the 21st century to a certain extent with looking at AR and those kind of things. You look at the things that The Weeknd has been doing, for example, with virtual reality gigs. I think it's given us all an opportunity to step back from an industry that was already really struggling on these things and making tentative steps forward. And it's allowed us to go through and explore those things. And some of the results have been really beautiful, and I think will hopefully help us move towards a subscription model. Again, as Rachel mentioned with Crack, the Quietus launched theirs in the last few days. I think it's kind of exciting, and it's a shame that it's taken all this genuine threat and anxiety to push it forward. But I'm seeing a lot of beautiful, interesting, exciting things coming forward, and that would be my positive to take from it.
I would say that, some of the things, or actually most of the things that the changes, they were already in the pipeline. That the pandemic kind of accelerated those changes, whether it's like from the desire to subscription model, people were pushed into adopting it. AR, VR also kind of on the way. A lot of talk over the last 5 years, and every conference I've been to now, suddenly it's all happening. Same as some of the kind of older models of print, may not be surviving, but there are probably reasons behind it as well. So what about you, Jan? What's your positive?
Yeah, it's probably like a little bit negative in its positivity, but I'm like quite happy that we've all learned how to video call now, so that you don't have to schlep across London for like a 1-hour meeting that turns out to be pointless. You can just do it on air.
Okay, fair enough. I think valid point. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, that is very much a nice one as well. Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned that I'm quite glad that it pushed us to reevaluate how we accept our like our reviews. So really forced us to become digital, which is something we knew we needed to do, and we just it forced our hand. But I think for me, the main positive is like just how positive and creative artists have been. Because I just like just seeing all the different things that they've tried to do to you know make the best of a really crap situation is just really inspiring and just very makes me hopeful, I guess.
And Dom?
I think for me, there's been a couple of things. I mean, one of the things that I've always found in the past is, you know, I obviously get inundated with emails from PRs and artists, but I never get a chance to listen to a lot of the stuff. Whereas this has sort of like given me an opportunity to listen to quite a lot of albums already, quite a lot of new artists that I wouldn't have heard before. And I think there's been some amazing music. I think 2020 has been one of the best years for music in certainly in the last 10 years. So from that point of view, I've discovered so many new artists and so many albums this year that it has in some ways been a bit of a godsend. So the last six months, I've been able to sort of like sit back and listen to things and I guess appreciate it more. And I think while I'm on the subject of appreciating stuff, I think also it's made me not take things for granted as much. So for example, things like festivals and going to live gigs, you kind of just took it for granted, and you'd sort of like think, well, you know, so and so are going to be on tour, and they'll play Nottingham again in the next 6 months or something. And I think now I'm sort of like more appreciative, really, of the next time that something does actually come around. You know, I'll make more of an effort to actually make sure that I'm there, and I guess I'll help.
Certainly valuing live music for sure, definitely. Whenever that's coming back, you know, in full force. Well, I found also, you know, that actually the bloggers, you know, the people who started new blogs, and as you mentioned, podcasts as well. That was another area. You know, there's definitely been kind of a growth and new things happening there, and people who had more time, at least at the beginning, had more time to listen to music for sure. Although, you know, I found that there was a bit of a dip in the first couple of months in the releases. You know, pause there, and then people just decided, well, what the heck, we may as well we may as well keep going. You know. So it's been an interesting time. And Rachel, what about you? What's your positive?
Similar to Jen, I think just we've kind of changed our approach to accessibility in every kind of sense. I think people aren't being locked out of kind of bigger cities where they think they can get jobs in, are the only places they think they can work in. Now this kind of like remote working opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people that maybe aren't able-bodied or don't live in big cities because they're expensive. I also think another positive is that it's opened up accessibility for different voices, kind of touching on like everything that's happened the last few months, politically and socially. I think a lot of publications have been forced to reevaluate their relationships with people from marginalized backgrounds and their role in you know, blocking their access. So I think that's been something that's been really positive, even though it kind of came from something horrible and traumatic. But yeah. So.
All right, thank you. Do you have any questions, any kind of points that we've not covered that perhaps you'd like to highlight? Anyone?
I only wanted just to kind of in agreement with both Dom and Rachel there about the move away, which was happening anyway, from very city-centric and particularly London-centric over here, journalism. As someone who's done a lot of this stuff from Torquay, it's been interesting actually watching other people getting acclimatized to doing a lot of phone interviews and a lot of Skype interviews, which is something that I've been doing anyway, and it has has opened a lot of doors for accessibility. So I think it's going to keep going that way, and it's been interesting to have it sort of again pushed onto us.
Yes, well, I'm myself based in Edinburgh as well,
Of
and
course.
Rachel's based in Berlin, and Dom in Nottingham. So it's kind of people are spread out all over the place. I've always been aware of that, but I'm also aware that a lot of, especially when it comes to interview opportunities, quite often they just happened in London only. Well, in that case, we still have a few minutes, and I just wanted to both Matthew and Rachel, you kind of mentioned it. I think after the first couple of months of sort of forced quietude of a global lockdown, beginning of the summer, we had really turbulent, really kind of febrile politically times where Black Lives Matter, and, politics kind of dominated the airwaves and affected, I think, all media coverage, you two have already mentioned that it's kind of affected what you were doing in your publications. So what about Jen? Were there any changes to the line of best fit?
I mean, we've always been quite aware of diversity at the line of best fit. I think we're quite diverse in what we cover. In terms of the editorial team, we're always looking for new writers from different backgrounds other than people who are white and middle class like myself. When it came to Black Lives Matter, when it was Blackout Tuesday, we shut down the site for the day, and we raised money for Black Visions, which is a charity in Minneapolis.
Okay, and Alex?
Well, we're quite privileged, I think, in the fact that because of the nature of our music that we cover, we've always had our eye on diversity and trying to up our level because our artists are so diverse. So we're always on the look for new writers, especially of minority and female persuasions or LGBTQ plus. But yeah, we've always kind of had our eye on it just because of the nature of it, I think.
All right, thank you. So I guess this is it. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking time and for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.